A man who does not move with the crowd will always appear ridiculous to the crowd. Imagine a world where failure isn't just acceptable, but celebrated as the path to greatness. Think for a moment, what if everything you believe about success and failure is completely wrong? Today we're diving into the brilliant mind of Franz Kafka to discover why the beauty of failure might just be the key to living an extraordinary life. Buckle up for a journey that'll challenge your perceptions and, who knows, maybe even change your entire worldview. And stick around till the end, because the last revelation we'll make is the most powerful of all, one that has the potential to transform not just your understanding of Kafka, but your whole approach to life. Franz Kafka, one of the 20th century's most enigmatic and influential writers, left us a legacy that goes way beyond literature. His philosophy, deeply rooted in accepting the absurd and valuing failure, offers a unique perspective on the human condition. But what exactly did Kafka want to teach us about failure, and how can we apply this wisdom in our everyday lives? To grasp Kafka's genius, we first need to understand the context he lived in. Born in 1883 in Prague, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Kafka grew up in a time of major social and political changes. His experience as a Jew in a predominantly Christian society, coupled with a tumultuous relationship with his authoritarian father, shaped his unique worldview. Kafka saw failure not as something to be avoided, but as an essential part of the human experience. In works like The Metamorphosis and The Trial, he explores themes of alienation, absurdity, and the individual's struggle against oppressive systems. Through these narratives, Kafka shows us that failure can be a source of insight and personal growth. But what exactly did Kafka mean by failure? For him, failure wasn't simply not achieving a goal, but rather the inability to conform to society's expectations. In a world that values success above all else, Kafka invites us to embrace our imperfections and limitations. Think for a moment, how many times have you felt inadequate or out of place? Kafka would argue that these feelings aren't flaws, but indicators that you're resisting the pressure to conform. It's in this resistance that the true beauty of failure lies. Kafka's philosophy on failure can be summed up in three fundamental principles. Acceptance of the absurd. Kafka believed the world is inherently absurd and that trying to find meaning in everything is a futile pursuit. By accepting the absurd, we can free ourselves from unrealistic expectations and find peace amidst chaos. Valuing individuality. For Kafka, true failure was losing one's identity in an attempt to please others. He encourages us to embrace our quirks and resist the pressure to conform. Transformation through failure. Kafka saw failure as an opportunity for personal transformation. Like Gregor Samsa in The Metamorphosis, sometimes we need to fail at being human to discover our true nature. But how can we apply this philosophy in our daily lives? Let's start by re-examining our relationship with failure. Instead of fearing failure, we can see it as a valuable teacher. Every time we fail, we learn something new about ourselves and the world around us. Think about some of history's greatest inventions and discoveries. Many of them arose from failures. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin by accident when one of his bacterial cultures was contaminated by a fungus. Thomas Edison made thousands of unsuccessful attempts before creating a functional, incandescent light bulb. These examples perfectly illustrate the beauty of failure that Kafka encourages us to embrace. Kafka also teaches us about the importance of authenticity. In a world that constantly pressures us to fit into predefined molds, Kafka's philosophy reminds us that our true strength lies in our uniqueness. When we embrace our imperfections and quirks, we become more resilient and better equipped to face life's challenges. Imagine how different it would be if, instead of constantly comparing ourselves to others and striving to achieve impossible standards of perfection, we embraced our flaws as an integral part of who we are. How would this change our approach to work, relationships, and life in general? Another fascinating aspect of Kafka's philosophy is his view on bureaucracy and power systems. In works like The Trial and The Castle, Kafka portrays Kafkaesque systems, complex, irrational, and oppressive. These narratives warn us about the dangers of blindly submitting to systems we don't understand or that don't serve us. Instead of fighting against these systems or trying to succeed within them, Kafka suggests we find ways to navigate them while maintaining our integrity. This might mean accepting that we won't always understand everything happening around us, but we can still maintain our autonomy and sense of self. The beauty of failure, in Kafka's view, also lies in how it connects us with our shared humanity. When we fail, we become vulnerable, and it's in this vulnerability that we often find deeper connections with others. After all, what's more human than failing and continuing to try? Kafka invites us to look at failure not as an end, but as a beginning. Each failure is an opportunity to redefine our goals, reassess our values, and rediscover who we really are. It's an invitation to be courageous, to take risks, and to live authentically. Kafka's philosophy on failure also has profound implications for how we deal with stress and anxiety in our daily lives. By accepting that failure is not only inevitable but potentially beneficial, we can alleviate much of the pressure we put on ourselves. Consider, for example, how this perspective could transform education. If we taught children to see failure as a natural part of the learning process, rather than something to be feared and avoided at all costs, we could create a more resilient and creative generation. Imagine schools where mistakes are celebrated as learning opportunities, where curiosity and experimentation are valued more than perfect grades. In the workplace, Kafka's philosophy could inspire a culture of innovation and experimentation. When people aren't afraid to fail, they're more likely to take creative risks and think outside the box. Companies that embrace this mindset are often the most innovative and successful in the long run. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of Kafka's philosophy on failure is how it can help us find meaning in a world that often seems meaningless. By accepting the absurdity of existence and embracing our failures, we can paradoxically find a sense of freedom and purpose. Kafka reminds us that life isn't about achieving some final state of perfection or success, but about the ongoing process of discovery and growth. Each failure, each moment of doubt or confusion, is an opportunity to learn something new about ourselves and the world around us. It's important to note that embracing failure doesn't mean giving up or accepting mediocrity. On the contrary, it means having the courage to keep trying even knowing that failure is a real possibility. It's about finding beauty and meaning in the process, not just in the end result. Kafka's philosophy also offers us a unique perspective on success. Instead of seeing success as something external, wealth, status, recognition, Kafka encourages us to redefine success in terms of personal authenticity and integrity. True success, in Kafka's view, is having the courage to be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you someone else. Think for a moment. How many times have you felt pressured to be someone you're not? How many times have you felt like a failure for not meeting others' expectations? Kafka's philosophy frees us from these external pressures, reminding us that our true strength lies in our uniqueness. Another fascinating aspect of Kafka's philosophy is how it relates to creativity. Kafka, himself a prolific writer, saw the creative process as a way to explore and express the complexities of human existence. For him, art wasn't about creating something perfect or universally acclaimed, but about expressing personal truths, no matter how uncomfortable or absurd they might seem. This view of creativity can be incredibly liberating. How many of us hold back from creating, whether it's art, music, writing, or any other form of expression, for fear of not being good enough? Kafka encourages us to create without fear, to embrace our imperfections, and use our experiences of failure as fuel for our creative expression. But the beauty of failure, as Kafka saw it, isn't limited to creativity or personal achievement. It has profound implications for how we relate to others and to society as a whole. By accepting our own flaws and limitations, we become more compassionate and understanding of others' failures. Imagine a world where failure wasn't stigmatized, but seen as a natural and valuable part of the human experience. How would this change our social interactions, our policies, our justice systems? Kafka's vision invites us to build a more empathetic and inclusive society where a person's value isn't measured by their successes, but by their humanity. It's important to note that embracing Kafka's philosophy on failure doesn't mean adopting an attitude of pessimism or defeat. On the contrary, it's a deeply optimistic philosophy at its core. It tells us that no matter how many times we fail or how absurd life may seem, there's always value in continuing, in persisting, in being authentically who we are. Kafka reminds us that life is an ongoing journey of self-discovery and growth. Each failure, each moment of doubt or confusion is an opportunity to learn something new about ourselves and the world around us. It's a chance to reinvent ourselves, to challenge our assumptions, and to expand our understanding of what's possible. So the next time you feel like a failure, remember Kafka's words. Remember that failure isn't the end, but a new beginning. Remember that your uniqueness, your imperfections, your struggles, all of this is part of who you are, and there's beauty in that. And remember, above all, that life isn't about avoiding failure, but about embracing it as part of our human journey. It's about finding beauty in the absurd, meaning in the struggle, and authenticity in the face of pressure to conform. Kafka teaches us that true success isn't about achieving some external standard of perfection, but about having the courage to be authentically who we are, with all our flaws and imperfections. It's about finding our own voice in a world that often tries to silence us, about maintaining our integrity in the face of pressure to conform. So, let's embrace failure. Let's celebrate it as a teacher, a catalyst for growth, a reminder of our shared humanity. Let's use it as fuel for our creativity, our compassion, our courage. Because in the end, the true beauty of failure lies in how it makes us more human, more authentic, more alive. It's in how it connects us to each other, in how it reminds us of our resilience and capacity for overcoming. And perhaps it's in this very acceptance of failure that we find the kind of success Kafka valued. The success of living authentically, of facing life's absurdity with courage and integrity, of finding beauty and meaning even in the most challenging circumstances. If you've watched this far, leave a comment saying, "I will embrace my failures as opportunities for growth and authenticity." Remember, you're not alone on this journey. We all face failures. We all struggle. We all doubt ourselves sometimes. But it's precisely in these shared struggles that we find our common humanity, our connection to each other. So, go ahead. Embrace your failures. Celebrate them. Use them as fuel for your growth, your creativity, your humanity. Because in the end, as Kafka teaches us, that's how we find our true strength, our true beauty, and our true humanity.